Chapter 4 Feast. Basic training is hell. A trainee can quit at any time, but if you want to become a Cherub agent, you have to get through it. Your brain and body are pushed to breaking point by instructors who don't care if you're crying, injured, hungry, or sick. All they care about is toughening kids up so they can cope with all the bad stuff that might happen on an undercover mission. And if you make it through the 100-day course, you'll be able to cope with just about anything. James had an emotional flashback as he peeked between branches at the windowless concrete building where Cherub trainees slept. He remembered himself 2 years earlier, huddled inside after an exhausting day of training, with the springs from the dank mattress jarring his back and rain plinking off the corrugated metal roof. "I didn't see any instructor come out," Lauren whispered. Bethany shrugged. "They must have noticed all the cameras going off." The threesome crept around behind the bushes until they came to the building's double-doored entrance. Lauren flicked her headlamp on and off, startling a bony-legged 10-year-old who was being made to spend the night standing on one leg, back to the wall, and hands on head. Trainees received punishments like this for the tiniest breach of the rules, sometimes even for no reason at all. "Who's out there?" the girl asked, in a plummy voice that hinted at a rich background. "Natasha?" Lauren asked, stepping out of cover. "Get back!" Natasha squealed desperately. "Mr. Large will be out here at any second. There's a video camera pointing right at us." "No, there isn't," Lauren grinned, as James and Bethany followed her out of the bushes. "We fused the circuit. He's probably out trying to fix it." As soon as Natasha heard that the cameras were off, she took her hands off her head, put her foot down, and began to massage her aching calf. "Oh," she moaned. "It's so painful standing on one leg like that. But I'm telling you, Large is still in there. I would have seen if he'd gone out." "Damn it," Lauren said. "How can he just be sitting there if we've blown up the cameras?" Bethany asked. "Unless he's nodded off," James said. "What are you lot doing here?" Natasha asked. "Rescue mission," Lauren smiled. "At least, we can't rescue you. But we brought you all extra food and dry underwear to cheer you up." "That's amazing," Natasha said, bouncing cheerfully on the balls of her bare feet. "You guys are so brave." Bethany went into her pack and pulled out a package wrapped in a cellophane freezer bag. 3 Snickers bars, a flapjack, 2 cartons of orange juice, and 2 fresh sets of underwear, she explained. "We've stripped as much packaging off the food as we can, but make sure the instructors don't catch you with anything you shouldn't have, or you'll get punished." Natasha almost burst into tears as she broke the package open and bit a massive chunk off the end of a Snickers bar. She said. "I am so starving. We spent 3 hours running around the assault course yesterday, and all we got for dinner was that watery green soup." "Oh God," James grimaced. "I'd forgotten all about training soup. That stuff always made me gag, no matter how hungry I was." James, Lauren, and Bethany looked at each other as Natasha started on her flapjack. "What can we do if Large is still in there?" James asked. "Well, he has to be asleep," Lauren said. "But we were planning for him to be on the other side of the compound," Bethany said. "He could burst out here any second." Half a minute earlier, James would have been arguing to quit and run. But the emotive scene of the training building and Natasha's ecstatic reaction to her package had changed his mind. "We've come this far," he said. "I'm up for sneaking inside if you two are." Lauren and Bethany exchanged surprised looks before nodding in agreement. James opened the door of the accommodation building and crept into a gloomy corridor. The smell was straight out of his training nightmares: sweat, antiseptic, and damp concrete. 3 steps in, he came to the open door of the instructor's lounge and craned his neck inside. Sure enough, the monstrous figure of Norman Large lay slumped across a battered sofa, with static fizzing on the 6 black and white monitors stacked on a desk opposite him. Cherub's nastiest employee had let himself go, since the humiliation of being demoted from head training instructor the year before. He now sported a ragged beard and a dozen kilos of fat around his midriff. Then suddenly, "No fish fingers," Mr. Large begged, as James nervously edged backwards. But it was just sleep talking, and Lauren grinned as if to say, "Who has nightmares about fish fingers?" "Right," James whispered to the girls. "You two get in there and hand those packages out fast. If Large wakes up, we're dead." The 9 kids in the dormitory were aged between 10 and 12, and they all slept solid, like you'd expect after 63 days of brutal training. James kept watch in the doorway as Lauren woke Rat, and Bethany rushed to her brother, Jake. The only light came from the green exit signs over the emergency doors. James wasn't an especially sensitive soul, but he felt a lump in his throat as Bethany woke her little brother and pulled him into a massive hug. "What are you doing here?" Jake gasped as Bethany pulled another ration pack out of her backpack. "Oh my God, is that a Snickers bar?" While Jake alternated between grinning at his sister, sobbing, and cramming chocolate down his neck, Lauren gave Rat a shorter embrace before going around waking the other trainees and handing out the provisions. Within a minute, all 9 trainees sat up in their beds, excitedly eating chocolate and sucking orange juice out of cartons. They seemed happier than their bruised and weary bodies gave them any right to be. A couple of lads who James had given maths tuition to came up and asked him for an update on all the latest campus gossip, while Lauren gathered up the cartons and wrappers so that no signs of their visit got picked up by the instructors who would inspect the room at sunup. A snore came from the lounge a couple of meters from where James was standing. As he glanced around, he forgot the jubilant atmosphere and remembered how dodgy their situation was. "Come on," he whispered. "It's not a tea party." As Bethany and Jake exchanged a final hug, Lauren zipped up the pack full of litter and headed towards James. But when she turned back for a final glance at Rat, Lauren paused for a second, then ran to his bed to give him a kiss. It was meant to be on the cheek, but Rat turned his head at the wrong moment and they ended up face to face. After a millisecond's hesitation, staring into Rat's sleepy brown eyes, she thought, "What the hell?" and kissed him on the lips. It didn't last long enough to be a proper snog, but it was a lot more than kissing your auntie on the cheek. In fact, Lauren didn't know exactly what it was, only that her mind was doing somersaults as she backed out of the room. "You're going to make a fantastic Cherub agent, Rat," Lauren choked, struggling to keep the tears back. She looked at the rest of the room, trying to hide her emotional state from James as she reached the doorway. "And all of you are going to make it through training," she added. James raised his hand in a wave as all the trainees thanked them for putting their necks out. "Don't let the bastards grind you down," James grinned. "Good luck." After a glance into the lounge to make sure Mr. Large was still asleep, James, Lauren and Bethany headed outside, exchanging a quick goodbye with Natasha before setting off at a run towards the main gate. "That was so cool," James grinned. Large won't get the CCTV working anytime soon. How often do you get a chance to make people happy like that? Bethany sounded really sad. I hope Jake gets through training. He'll be okay, Bethany, James said, sympathizing with her for the first time ever. He's still so little, James. Tough as old boots, though, James said. The emotional scene in the dormitory had caused a weird role reversal. James was now in charge, while Bethany was in a state, and Lauren had apparently taken leave of planet Earth. I just kissed a boy. On the mouth, Lauren gawped, as if she could hardly believe it herself. James beamed at her. It had to happen sooner or later. Lauren tipped her head back and looked up at the stars. A boy, she repeated, not sure whether to grin or screw up her face in disgust. It was only a short walk down a concrete path from the accommodation block to the front gate. James hesitated before pushing it open. Earth to Lauren, he said, waving a hand in front of her face. Get it together, girl. When I push this gate, the alarm goes off. Mr. Large will wake up from the land of fish fingers, and we'd better be well out of it. Lauren said airily. The instant James rattled the gate, a klaxon sounded and floodlights lit up the perimeter of the compound. Deciding to put speed before stealth, he led the trio into the middle of the football fields instead of the winding route through the trees they'd taken on the way out. It was a 6-minute run back to the main building, flat out and more or less in a straight line. They cut around to the fire door at the rear, which Lauren had propped open with a wedge to stop it from closing on itself. Their trainers were sodden, and they pulled them off in the stairwell before hurrying upstairs in their damp socks, with trainers hooked over their fingers. James said goodnight to the girls on the 6th floor landing, leaving them 4 more flights to reach their rooms on the 8th. James had a weird mixture of feelings as he walked into his room. He was really annoyed about Lauren blackmailing him, even though he now realised it had all been for a good cause. He flung off his outer layer of clothing and crashed onto the beanbag in front of his TV, totally knackered. It was 3:06 a.m, he hadn't slept a wink, and his legs killed from all the running and waiting. He had a fitness training session in less than 4 hours and still had to shower and put his muddy clothes in soak before he could get into bed. But before any of that, James needed a drink. As he crouched in front of his miniature fridge, trying to decide between Pepsi and Sprite, the phone beside his bed rang. Phones don't ring at 3:06. James picked up gingerly, guessing it was Lauren or Bethany with a query about something that had happened, but the voice was much older, soft and with a slight Scottish accent. Hello there. James's heart warped to 1,000,000 beats per minute. It was Mac, the chairman of Cherub and most senior staff member on campus. Oh, James said, faking a yawn. You woke me up. Did I indeed? Dr. McCafferty laughed. I take it you sleepwalked the entire journey through the trees, across the training compound, into the trainees' dormitory, and back up the stairs to your room? You, James said, pounding his fist against the carpet as he realised that the shit had hit the fan. Sat here watching the whole thing on our backup CCTV system, Max said, finishing James's sentence. So I'll be seeing you, your sister Lauren, and Bethany Parker in my office at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Is that clear? Yes, sir, James said gloomily, cursing his luck as the phone went dead in his ear.